Welcome back to the Social Work Race. Appreciate you visiting again. I just want to say, you know what? I've been encouraged by a lot of you in response to this podcast. I just want to say I appreciate it. I had a really good phone call today. I've been encouraged by you. And you know, this is not even set up for me. It was set up for you all. But you all are just bringing it back to me. So let's send it back out there. Appreciate. I just want to put it in perspective as well, what this podcast is about. It's about people on the front line of society. People, and I mean that in terms of social care and healthcare. However, it was originally set up for students, because when I was a student, I couldn't find a down-to-earth podcast or YouTube channel to help me understand, because I was trying to prepare for the real world when it comes to social work. I had already worked in a youth offending service. I had already worked in care services in schools, and social work was in a sense a different or the next level. And so I realized I'm looking for an understanding of what the job is before I get there. Couldn't find it. Very clinical outlay. And so I said, you know what, let me set something up. And again, I'm encouraged by your responses about this podcast. Let me not labor the point. Again, I'm just sending it back out to you. Really appreciate your support. Please share, please subscribe, and please share and subscribe again. Today, I wanted to look at two things combined. Something I love to do. I love to combine topics. I think most topics can be put together. The good lives model, which is something primarily used in the youth justice, youth service, the youth offending teams during their assessments. I guess sadly, in a way, it's a token. It's of token use, but it's a really interesting theory that's quite broad. Helps us understand why young people make the decisions that they do, but more in line with around criminality. It's a very good theory to help us understand a few things. As with all theories, there are critiques, but I'm going to break it down for you, because our use of theory in our assessments and our approach to families is informative. It helps us understand things that we don't necessarily understand ourselves, or it's like a pre-prepared statement, perspective on what we are seeing through someone else's eyes. That's what theory is about. And it's helpful to incorporate that in our assessments. And, you know, I deal a lot with assessments on this channel because it's the practical, everyday work. So if you're a student listening to this, it's the practical, everyday work that I'm going to be talking about. I'm not going to just talk about the fact that we need to do assessments and make children safe. Let's look at the issues around our interpretation of what we see. I want you to be able to, when you're listening to this podcast, approach your job more effectively. The fact that I do this podcast, which means that I'm kind of advantaged. Is advantage the word? I want to use a word. It's called blessed. Fortunate to be around people who are always feeding me information. And that's one of the advantages of really holding the mic. So the good lives model is something that you would, as standard in the youth justice, apply to your assessments. You can use other theories, but they like to see this. I think that it's not good when it's just a standard practice. What we should do is be more explorative with the theories that we use, so that we're not just ticking boxes, which is very easily done and very acceptable. But that's the problem I have with it. And I like to use theory. I'm into sociology and psychology. This could explain that could explain this, that's me. But let's look at the good lives model I'm yapping on. I'm looking at it through a paper written on the Science Direct website in, should we say, when was it? 2014. That's it. integrating the Good Lives model with relapse prevention. So we're looking at how we can use the Good Lives model to help young people avoid going in a cycle of reoffending. I think the reoffending rate in this country is quite high. People come out of prison, adults as well. Obviously, it's adults for the most part. Come out of prison and they end up back in there. And there are reasons for that. And the Good Lives model helps us understand that. Let me read through. It says, the Good Lives model is an example of a strengths-based approach, which is garnering growing interest and is increasingly being adopted and integrated into offender rehabilitation, including with juveniles who have engaged in sexually abusive behaviors. It offers an alternative to more traditional risk, need, responsivity, rehabilitation approaches, as it seeks to reduce risk while also explicitly supporting offenders to develop more personally meaningful and fulfilling lives. Listen, the work that we do with our young people or adults, I've done this before and it's really good. I'm going to give you a major tip for working with your service user group, and that is to involve them in the theory. Present to them the theory. It's worked for me. Talk to them about the Good Lives model. Yeah, this is really comprehensive. I know what I gave you was a mouthful, but it's strengths based and it's helping people to be really rehabilitated, if I can say it, from their destructive behaviors or cycles of behavior. Okay, it's really good. It says the underlying the Good Lives model is the assumption that, to some extent, all individuals have similar basic needs and aspirations that they strive to meet and realize in their lives. So, for example, I'm working with young people, so I'm going to relate to young people, or if you're in probation, everybody's trying to meet a need. That's why I'm that guy that will say there are socially unacceptable behaviors or practices or questionable practices, and then there are acceptable. So on one hand, we have a problem with people or young people smoking weed, but we don't have a problem with people drinking wine. We may have a problem with a man holding a bottle of whiskey on the street, but we don't have a problem with someone walking home, man or woman, walking home from Tesco's holding a bottle of wine. They're both alcoholic. You can get drunk from both. They can both have the same impact. Yes, one is stronger than the other, but one is socially acceptable and one is not. Why? There's a whole lot of information that we can look at. My question is, why do they have the alcohol in the first place? What need are they trying to meet? They are both looking for the same, looking at having a need met. That's what I should say. And this is called a human good. There are primary goods and there are secondary goods. I'd love to go into all of it. I don't think I need to. It's for you to go and explore. But let me do a little bit. It says primary goods are outcomes, states of affairs, or experiences that individuals seek for their own sake that are likely to result in higher levels of well-being. So this is what an individual is looking for. They're looking to be fulfilled in some capacity, the primary good. Now, if there are experiences, incidents, traumas, anything like maybe loss, abuse, lack of discipline, lack of nutrition, a part of their systems theory that is broken, then the person will still try to achieve these needs. However, they will sometimes break the law or conduct some socially unacceptable attitude or behavior that gets them in trouble. Do you know what I mean? And so what the Good Lives models does, it says, look, these are the behaviors. There are a range of behaviors that they're trying to, achieve. Bear me 1 second. Yeah, for example, some people just want a happy life. Some people want to gain knowledge. If you want a happy life, sometimes you'll do things that are very questionable, destructive. You could be trying to, you want to go and have a holiday, and so you might want to, you might want to fake your. No, I won't say that. So, for example, number one on the list is you want to achieve a happy life. Number two, you want to increase your knowledge. You want to play. You want excellence at work. You want inner peace. You want to relate to people. This is the list of areas, categories that people want to achieve to meet a need. Some people want pleasure, but you know that there's two sides to every coin. So when we're trying to achieve these things, sometimes we can do something legal or illegal or morally improper that would bring the house down. And that's what this does. So this leads me on to the second part of my topic, because we have to be careful when we're approaching families, because we can approach families with stereotypes, and that's why we use theory to avoid our own stereotypes. Or, sadly, and a critique to that would be, you can use theory to establish your stereotypes. That's something you need to look out for. We could look at that another day, but we use theory ultimately to give another perspective. And I'm going to give you an example of where I'm going with this. I remember I was invited to a conference with the police in the community in Wandsworth. Oh gosh, it was probably about 7 years ago, in a community centre. It was packed out. There must have been about 300 people there easily, mostly black people from that community, to address knife crime, because there was a parent there who had recently lost her 15-year-old son. She has 3 children, 2 big boys in their late 20s, and her 15-year-old son was stabbed and killed. And in Wandsworth, there was a lot of deaths from knife crime. And it was reported in the papers that it was questioned as to her parenting, also in the news. And I used to listen to the talk radio a lot in those days. What are these parents doing? Do you know what I mean? And the stereotype is there. If we have bad kids, then we have bad parents. And I'm going to say this to you. Not all dysfunctional children have bad parents. Now, interestingly, stereotypes, they have to be managed, because this young person had never been in trouble with the police, and he had never hurt anybody. He was caught up in a situation that was beyond his control, and he was killed as a result. He was innocent. He wasn't involved in any drugs. I shouldn't even have to justify what I'm saying. His hands were clean. And the mum had to get up and say, people saying that he comes from a bad parent home. But it wasn't the case. So the Good Lives model helps us understand, actually, some children are just trying to relate. And on the list is relatedness. Whether it be intimate, romantic, familial relationships. He has a peer group, and maybe out of the 5 boys he was with, 1 or 2 of them were slightly involved in things they shouldn't. And they had beef with other peers, and he fell into that, and he was hurt as a result. He was killed as a result. Do you see how stereotypes can lead us in the wrong direction? How we have to measure ourselves when we approach a family? So the Good Lives model doesn't say it's bad parenting. What the Good Lives model says is, actually, he was just with friends. Or let's say the guy who committed the murder, he was in a group and he was pressured into, or he just wanted to be a part of something. He just wanted to be in relationships with other peers. And in so doing was led into this destructive or dangerous high-risk lifestyle. So the Good Lives model explains to us how we need to be careful about assumptions. Actually, rather look at these people, look at everyone in the sense of everyone's trying to get someone, achieve something. Some people are, now we're in a financial crisis. People will, law-abiding citizens will try to make ends meet any way they can. When you have bills to pay and mouths to feed, what are you going to do? And so the Good Lives model will say this person just tried to achieve excellence at work. And so he's like, well, I want to bring home the bread, but I'm struggling. Someone's offered me a job. It's a questionable job. It's a high risk job. And this is what young people fall into. So some of them are really poor. Single parent homes. Maybe their parents are immigrants. Maybe there is no recourse to public funds. Maybe they've been abused. And they just want the peace of being in a family, a community, connection with wider social groups. That's what humans do. This is what humans do. We try to achieve humanity. And so when the pennies are pinched with young people and adults who are perfectly law-abiding, someone presents something to us to allow us to achieve that primary good, which is to be in a part of a community, to excellence in agency, inner peace. I'm going to have to smoke some weed to do that. I'm going to need to drink a bottle of wine to achieve some level of peace. I become an alcoholic. I become an addict. I'm starting to deal it now. I'm starting to sell this because I need to achieve economic freedom. Do you know what I mean? This is what the Good Lives model says. It's basically saying that as a result of trying to achieve this, sometimes we fall into delinquent or destructive behaviors. And this is a really good piece of work to do with your young person or your adult. To take them through, what do you think you were trying to achieve, and did it work? Walk them through the steps of it. There's a lot more involved in this theory and model. It's really good to use in your assessments because it really does explain for you what was going on. And it's really for us to explore that with our young people. What was going on for you? For our service users, what was going on for you? Why are you an alcoholic? How did that happen? When did it start? So what were you trying to achieve? A lot of people, when it comes to drugs and alcohol, they will tell you it's not about the drugs and alcohol. They were trying to achieve something. I just wanted to drown the voices out. You know, when people are abused, they want to drown the voices out. They will do what it takes. I've worked with young people like that. They have to take something, and it could be literally just inner peace. I just need to drown those voices of my memories out. So it's a brilliant model to use in your assessments. It helps you to avoid discrimination. Include it in your assessments. Especially students out there, get ready to use this model. Look it up, listen to it on video, or actually listen to this podcast. That would be better for everyone, really. And one of the ways that we want to be able to kind of capture the truth of why the service user is doing what they're doing is to capture their voice. If you can, and if they will, let them tell you. And that's work. That's actually a piece of work during the assessment process and after, capturing their voice to see how we can get to the root of it all. That's what I have for you today. Thank you for listening, and I hope it helped. Now, go and look after yourself. Take care.